tell you something. For the first time in my adult life, I am proud of my country because it feels like hope is finally making a comeback.
Yes, Michelle Obama with her arms, such arms. Where did she get those arms? And what is Larry Holmes doing for arms now? She's a hero of the revolution. She had some kind of a job for a little while at the University of Chicago. Some kind of public outreach or something. Princeton, Harvard, really nothing after that. It's different being a left-wing Democrat WOC, you know. Well, happy Tuesday and welcome back. We remain at 888-630-9625. Michelle Obama, that was her husband was going to be president of the United States. It was the first time in her lifetime that she was proud of her country, and it was because of race or something like that. Because, you know, Princeton didn't make her proud of her country, and Harvard didn't make her proud of her country. Growing up in Chicago didn't make her proud of her country. Her father, one of the great stories of the whole Obama administration, the whole Obama era, is that her mother, Michelle Obama's mother, lived in the White House for 8 years and was completely ignored as a story. It should have been a reality TV series on MTV or something like that. It should have been. Mom, you know, who grew up, mom from Chicago, raised her kids on the south side of Chicago, and husband with a good government job, and then, you know, the kids go to Princeton and Harvard Law and then spend their whole lives complaining. Maybe that's where they learned to complain. It's hard to say. But now Michelle, she has done an interview on a podcast. And this is a little bit funny, actually. The podcast is known for being, the number one mental health podcast in the United States of America or in the world. And boy, do the Democrats need more of this, because the epidemic, forget about that Wuhan Red Death pandemic, the pandemic of mental illness, mental instability in the Democrat Party in America is really the biggest problem that we face, I think. Joe Biden in Charleston, South Carolina yesterday, fanning the flames of racial discontent at a black church where a terrible crime took place about 9 years ago, and completely ignoring all of the homicides and the mayhem and the anarchy in Washington, D.C. and Chicago and in all of that. But never mind any of that. Also, I want to get to this too. The special counsel, Jack Smith, was the target of a practice called swatting, where someone calls 911 and says, oh, no, there's terrible shooting going on. This man just shot his wife on his front doorstep. And the police respond like the SWAT team arrives, right? Because they report a violent crime, a crazy violent crime. And someone did that to special counsel Jack Smith on Christmas Day. And the police showed up at his place, but he's got marshals out front. And the marshal said, no, there's nothing going on here, so it's fine. So it's kind of no big deal. But the news media is in a tizzy about it. Now, the Democrats have popularized this by doing this to Republicans all over the country, trying to get people killed by the SWAT teams. And sometimes, you know, not everybody has marshals out in front of their home like Jack Smith waiting to receive the police when they arrive. So it's really no big deal in the case of Jack Smith. But headlines like MSDNC, Pandora's box that Trump opened, Jack Smith targeted by attempted swatting. It was attempted, but it didn't work. And it's all Trump. Trump did it. No, once again, this is the projection thing. They do it to 100 people, and then when it happens to them once, it's all your fault. Now it's an issue, right? Now that's the first. It's like the riot at the Capitol on January 6th. All the other riots were just great, but this one crosses the line. Swatting is a micro version of the same thing. They swat 100, more than 100 people. It's happening all over the place, hundreds and hundreds of cases of left-wingers swatting for political reasons. I know people, conservatives, that have had this happen to them at their homes because lefties call and say, oh, no, there's shooting and there's blood everywhere and they're shooting. So the SWAT team shows up, right? And people might get shot by mistake, and this is what the lefties are hoping. But then when it happens once to one of them, then, and it's funny that he's one of them and he's supposed to be an objective, referee here, but never mind that. Pandora's box that Trump opened. No, you opened it. You definitely opened it. But never mind that. That is the old double standard and amazing stuff. Apparent swatting incident targets Jack Smith and Judge Tanya Chutkan, a frothy anti-Trump. Now, this is kind of, I don't know why the police don't they have your phone number when you call 911? Isn't that an automatic part of the 911 thing? Don't they know who you are immediately? Does 911 take anonymous phone calls, with call blocking or something like that? Targeted with swatting call on Christmas Day. And now it matters. Now swatting is an issue. Now, it's been fine for a couple of years that this swatting practice has been ongoing, and it's 100% of the time minus two people. Lefties targeting pro-American people with American flags and normal children and things like that. But it's been Republicans targeted the entire time. Never mind that, because that's not a part of the story that NBC is reporting. Marjorie Taylor Greene, her Georgia home was swatted recently. It's a common thing. Multiple Republican state officials, victims of swatting calls. These are other headlines, but our fake news media doesn't cover that. NBC4 in Columbus, Ohio. And, at least 3 members of Congress targeted with swatting. New York Republican Brandon Williams, latest to reveal he was victim of hoax call, also on Christmas Day. But the fake news media, the corrupt, filthy news media in the United States, they only report on it when it happens to Jack Smith because they can blame Trump for it. See? But the practice was created by lefties targeting Republicans, trying to get them shot and killed by the police because they think it's funny. It's you have Prince Albert in a can. Is your refrigerator running? There's a shooting taking place. He just shot his wife. Florida Republican Senator Rick Scott had also been targeted by swatting. Pay no attention to that because as long as it's Republicans, it's not news, you see. But when it happens to a Republican, and of course Marjorie Taylor Greene in Georgia, target of swatting, I think she has had multiple experiences like this, but never mind that. So, also this fake Secretary of State in Maine who is a left-wing Democrat hunting Trump, Shenna Bellows. It's not even Sheena. It's Shenna, which is not a recognizable name, is it? That's not a real name. And she claims, probably a false claim, that she was the target of swatting too. But now NBC News and the networks are covering it because they can blame Trump for it. That's the actual reason. Pretty amazing stuff. Yeah, it's a big thing that the Democrats have started and they've carried out for a long, long time. Then when they get a taste of their own medicine, then sure. Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, related, of course, John Ashcroft, his home was swatted, but pay no attention to that. The Democrats trying to get people shot by SWAT teams by claiming there are violent crimes taking place and that the police have to show up and stop the killing. And you never hear of anybody being arrested for it, do you? But maybe now the police will get on the stick. The Justice Department will get on the stick because Jack Smith was the target of swatting. Now it ought to be illegal. As long as it's Republicans, it's really not a big deal. Oh, speaking of which, January 6th, I know that Enrique Tarrio was sentenced to 22 years, African-American, Cuban-American. Proud Boys. 4 of them came to Washington, D.C. and were stabbed by Black Lives Matter people in Washington, D.C. Nobody was arrested. Nobody's going to jail for stabbing Enrique Tarrio or Bevelyn Beatty, of an African-American woman with the Proud Boys because it's a racist organization, right? And that's what the Democrats will tell you. But the racist Democrats come out and stab people. Now, Enrique Tarrio, Cuban-American, African-American, sentenced to 22 years in prison. On January 6th, he was in Baltimore. He wasn't even in Washington, D.C. But that's not a problem because the Democrats are the left and they put their political enemies in prison. It's what they do. And now there's a crazy story today that is worth making note of because it's a point of comparison. And it's what a lot of us talk about and have been talking about for a long time. Navy sailor sentenced to 27 months, not 27 years, 27 months, that is 2 years and 3 months, in prison, can get out much earlier with good behavior. U.S. Navy sailor sentenced to 27 months in prison for selling military secrets to China. China. And here is a Chinese American who joined the Navy, convicted of selling military secrets to China. I think, remember when the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Thoroughly Modern Milley, called General Lee, I remember this because General Lee, like L.I. in China, to talk to him and calm him down because Trump and he, Thoroughly Modern Milley, betrayed the President of the United States, should have been prosecuted, called the Chinese, they're the enemy, general, to calm him down, to assuage his concerns because Trump might be off the rails or something. And now we've got a U.S. Navy serviceman who admitted to accepting bribes from a Chinese intelligence officer, kind of like Fang Fang and Democrat Congressman Eric Swalwell from California. Sexual relationship with Fang Fang, the Chinese intelligence officer sent to the United States to do exactly what she did and cultivate Democrats like Eric Swalwell with sex, and took him from a city council seat in California to the House of Representatives and the Intelligence Committee. Good job, Fang Fang, as a Chinese spy. And the Democrat Party is fine with this, and that means the news media is too. But a U.S. Navy serviceman, a sailor, admitted to accepting bribes from a Chinese intelligence officer, I wonder if there was sex too, in exchange for sensitive U.S. military information, has been sentenced to more than 2 years in federal prison. Enrique Tarrio was in Baltimore on January 6th. He got 22 years in prison. U.S. District Judge R. Gary Klausner on Monday handed down a 27-month prison sentence to Petty Officer Wen Hang Zhao. Wen Hang Zhao, 26 years old, of Monterey Park, California. Justice Department had sought a sentence of 37 months, not 37 years. He's selling Chinese secrets, being bribed to China, communist China, and he gets 27 months. And the Justice Department had sought 37 months. That is pretty appalling stuff. He's a Chinese communist spy. Saylor admitted to receiving nearly $15,000 in bribes from the intelligence officer of Chinese intelligence between August of 2021 and May of 2023. Not even a year ago. And no big deal. It'll do like 6 months and they'll let him walk. He worked at the Naval Base Ventura County in Port Hueneme, California. Port Hueneme. Now, this is worth pointing out because, you know, there are people that, now they're going after people that didn't even enter the Capitol. How about that? And trying to hunt them down and put them in prison. But the Chinese spy, Chinese American, joins the Navy, spying for communist China, intelligence operative cultivating this sailor, and 27 months in prison. Isn't that amazing? Yes, sir. Just extraordinary stuff. Two-tiered system of justice? Nah. All right, listen, I've got Michelle Obama coming up for you in this hour, and Newt Gingrich talking about what's happening to our country. We are at 888-630-9625. Michelle Obama, she's standing by. I think she's tan, rested, and tow truck ready. She's going to be the nominee, maybe. What do you think? for the Democrat Party when Joe Biden drops out for medical reasons. We're at 888-630-9625. Hey, it's Chris Plant, excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com. All right, and let's, I do have Michelle Obama coming up crazy. Is she running for president? And Newt Gingrich with some thoughts. And we have this radical left-wing extremist DA in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, Fani Willis. You're supposed to say Fani Willis. And she is boinking the guy that the city is paying to prosecute and pursue Trump. And they're going on vacation together with the taxpayer money. And all of this is fine with the news media. All right, let's go to the phones. Let's go to Tim calling from Crownsville, Maryland. Timothy, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for taking my call so much.
You bet.
Your show is the greatest. It truly is. I've been listening to you since right before Trump started running for president. You know, isn't selling our secrets to another country, isn't that treason? I don't understand how. I mean, this person just sold. This maybe person just sold our secrets to another country. Isn't that treason? How come he wasn't charged with treason? I mean, is he a Democrat? Is that why?
I can only assume. I mean, he is selling secrets to China. Senator Dianne Feinstein had a Chinese intelligence officer on her staff in her San Francisco office for about 20 years. Eric Swalwell, last time we looked, he may still be dating Fang Fang, who is a Chinese intelligence operative sent to do exactly what she's done. And that's fine with the New York Times and the Democrat Party, but I repeat myself. And yeah, this sailor committed what I think could and should fairly be described as treason. Yeah, it sure looks like treason. And 27 months. Now, again, if you were on Capitol Hill on January 6th, you might get 27 months for standing there and smoking a cigarette.
Or you could be there 3 years without even being charged in prison, right? I mean, you're locked up and not even being charged. So, no due process. I mean, our country is becoming a communist country. My family's been here for almost 300 years, 1729. And what's happening in our country right now is crazy. It's disgusting. We don't recognize it. You are a true patriot. That's a fact.
Why do you think it looks like it looks today?
Well, because of the Democrats, because these people these are communists. These are not Democrats. They're communists trying to take over our country. It's obvious. It's all about power. It's all a power grab.
Yes, it is. And, Barack Obama made the CIA director, John Brennan, a Communist Party voter, literally. Barack Obama mentored by Frank Marshall Davis, a card-carrying member of the Communist Party. This is the left, all right? The Democratic Party isn't, and these aren't liberals. This is the left. All right, I tell you what, let me get into a bunch of news because the Atlanta Journal-Constitution has a story that they didn't break themselves, but they're reporting it, that the DA, their radical left-wing extremist Fani Willis, who insists on being called Fani or something funny. It's Fani Willis, and she does the can-can. Fani Willis does the can-can? Yeah, sure. She is dating the guy and funneling taxpayer money to the guy that she's dating, who's supposed to be a Trump special prosecutor. And I want to get into that. And Newt Gingrich and President Trump has weighed in on that as well. And Newt Gingrich was on the television last night, and I want to share some of that with you as well. But right now, let's go to Mooch, because the headline at the Fox News Channel, Mooch, as she's commonly known, Michelle Obama says she's, quote, terrified about what could possibly happen. The whole world is terrified about what could possibly happen, and it's because of you guys. It's because your husband, one of the world's leading racists and dividers, but never mind that, mentored by Communist Party leader Frank Marshall Davis, and then making CIA director of John Brennan, Communist Party voter, and then bringing Van Jones into the White House, proud Communist Party member, bragged about being a communist. I'm not sure if he joined the party, but he's self-described as a communist. So that's good enough for me. You think he voted for Gus Hall? Nobody's ever asked him because our news media is a gang of corrupt bootlicks. But let's go to Michelle Obama. Says she's terrified. Michelle Obama presses the panic button on the 2024 election from the radical left-wingers at Mediaite because she went on a podcast called Jay Shetty. That's apparently his actual name. Nobody would come up with that if that weren't your real name. S-H-E, got to spell and pronounce carefully, S-H-E-T-T-Y. That is, you should not thank your father for that. That's not a good one. Michelle Obama appeared on Jay Shetty's On Purpose podcast. Now, it should be noted, this is the #1 mental illness podcast in the country and possibly the world. I think they claim the world. Is that right? The #1 mental illness podcast in the world. I think they call it a mental health podcast. But doesn't that also imply mental illness podcast? I think it does. Where she admitted, this is the left-wing media, she admitted she was terrified about what could possibly happen. Maybe war in the Middle East, American hostages being taken by Hamas, war in Europe with Putin, nuclear power invading Ukraine, and hundreds of thousands killed. And honestly, how many hostages? How many American hostages? Have you noticed the American news media they couldn't even care less about the American hostages being held by Hamas in the Gaza? Not a news story, not a story. So Shetty, his name is Shetty. What do you think his nickname is? What do you think he's got a fraternity name? Looks like kind of a frat boy without the Bud Light. Shetty asked former First Lady Michelle Hussein Obama, what keeps you up at night? And let's go to the audio here because here's Michelle Obama, and it's got people suggesting, oh, she's dipping her toe, even though she's never had a real job, into the political waters. Never been elected to anything. You know, Donald Trump had never been elected to anything before he was elected president of the United States, but he had an amazing career already. Oh, I got another story. I got to tell you, I got all these stories. You may remember the great Rush Limbaugh. All right, the great Rush Limbaugh. The great Rush Limbaugh had, as you may be aware, a beautiful home on the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, in Palm Beach, Florida, where all the rich people live. And Rush Limbaugh had been very, very successful in his life doing the world's greatest radio show and inventing a genre. Well, I was texting with a friend who comes from a wealthy family in Chicago about a week ago, and she was telling me that someone she knows had bought Rush Limbaugh's mansion on the ocean in Palm Beach and torn it down. Just tore the whole thing down. Multiple houses on the property and everything. And it turns out that's true. The heir to the Estee Lauder Cosmetics fortune bought Rush Limbaugh's $155 million house. I think it was originally on the market for $170-something million. And these prosecutors in New York, they put Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate, they said that Donald Trump was overvaluing his properties, and then they set the value of Mar-a-Lago at $49 million. Isn't that right? 27. Oh, I apologize. $27 million. $27 million. $27 million. And I said at the time his tennis courts would sell for more than $27 million. Mar-a-Lago goes from, it's called Mar-a-Lago, Mar-C-Lago Lake, on the spit of land, the peninsula where Palm Beach is. Donald Trump's estate, the Mar-a-Lago estate, famous estate, historic estate, is, I think, the only one that goes all the way from the Atlantic Ocean over to the lake on the other side of the peninsula, Mar-a-Lago, right? And this crooked prosecutor said, oh, you're overvaluing your properties. So he jumped in to undervalue Trump's properties because he's a criminal, but he won't be held accountable. And Rush Limbaugh's estate, his house, doesn't go from one side to the other. It is a comparatively modest piece of property, the land itself and the house itself, comparatively modest. And it sold for $155 million. Mar-a-Lago, by this standard, would go for $500 to $600 million. And Donald Trump has even suggested it might get $1 billion for it, and it's not out of the question. It's certainly not out of the question. But this Estee Lauder heir paid $155 million for Rush Limbaugh's house, and William P. Lauder is his name, and promptly tore it down, and is apparently going to build something else there. So I just wanted to mention that. Now, why did he tear it down? Well, because didn't like Rush Limbaugh. So $155 million tear down, and then this idiot prosecutor in New York puts puts Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago at a value of $27 million, when it is 10 times the estate that in a Rush Limbaugh beautiful, incredible place, $155 million. But the lies are so big, honestly. All right, now let's go to, speaking of the lies being so big, let's go to Michelle Obama. I just want to make that comparison. $155 million teardown for the grandson of Estee Lauder, William P. Lauder, who's in his 60s. And it's a teardown for him, $155 million. And then this idiot crook in New York, prosecutor, puts Mar-a-Lago at $27 million value. And yesterday I went on Google Earth, and I looked at Rush Limbaugh's property, and I looked at Mar-a-Lago, and the difference is so stark, so dramatic, that I literally, if that's $155 million teardown for Rush Limbaugh's property, then Mar-a-Lago is at least $600 million, based on that metric. No kidding. But they put the value at $27 million, while accusing you of overvaluing the property. You come in to undervalue the property. It's 1/10 the value, 1/20th the value, but they're crooks. They just want to jail their political enemies. All right, here's, speaking of which, here's Michelle Obama talking to a man named Shetty. That could be the name of a movie, A Man Named Shetty.
What's going to happen in this next election? I am terrified about what could possibly happen, because our leaders matter. Who we select, who speaks for us,
That's
who
right.
holds that bully pulpit. It affects us in ways that sometimes I think people take for granted. The fact that people think that government,
Listen,
does it really even do anything? And I'm like, oh my God, does government do everything for us? And we cannot take this democracy for granted. And sometimes I worry that we do. Those are the things that keep me up.
Government does everything for us. Deutschland, über alles. Government, the more government does for you, the worse off you are. That is. And we have a social safety net. I'm fine with a social safety net. In fact, we should grab all these insane people off the sidewalk in front of my building and throw them in a loony bin. I'd like to see our stinking, rotten, filthy government do that. What do you think about that? Sounds like a good idea. And it's a republic, a constitutional republic, not a democracy. And government doesn't do everything for us, but government does have a role, like national security, and maybe should secure our border. That'd be something that government could do for us. But no. Instead, all right, here's Mooch with a man named Shetty.
What is the thing that keeps you up at night?
More to do with the world that we're in. There's such a thing as knowing too much. It could be any range of things that comes across the desk of the leader of the free world, right? So I know a lot about what's going on.
She knows a lot.
What keeps me up are the things that I know.
Mm-hmm.
The war in the region, in too many regions. What is AI going to do for us? The environment, are we moving at all fast enough? What are we doing about education? Are people going to vote? And why aren't people voting? I mean, those are the things that keep me up, because you don't have control over them. Mm-hmm. And you wonder, where are we in this? Where are our hearts?
Yeah, vote. It's a vote. And why aren't people voting? Well, because of the lies. That's a really big part of it. And the war in the region. And then she stammered and realized, oh, yeah, there are multiple wars. Let's see, there's Yemen, there's Israel, there's Ukraine and Russia. China, Taiwan. The North Koreans were firing rounds that prompted the South Koreans to fire rounds, artillery rounds, just over the weekend. Pay no attention to that. This is what American weakness rots. And honestly, Michelle Obama, and she's sounding very political with Mr. Shetty over here. Michelle Obama, they're still obsessed. They labeled Ronald Reagan's economic programs in the 1980s, which were extraordinarily successful. They labeled it trickle down, and they're still using this trickle down thing. Now, with Democrats, trickle down is a different thing altogether. It has to do with golden showers and prostitutes.
We have this trickle down approach, right? Yeah. That's the basis of a capitalistic economy, right? But that's not happening.
Yes.
It's not trickling. Mm-hmm. The law would require in whatever way, if we're not trickling voluntarily, then we need to be forced to trickle.
Forced.
Mandatory trickling down.
Yeah.
Well, what the Democrats don't want to ban, they want to make mandatory. And remember, the Democrats don't care what you do as long as it's mandatory. Mandatory trickling. That means theft, criminal government, stealing everybody's money, forced trickling down, right? We need forced trickle down. It's not trickling. Your husband was president for nearly a decade, and now his sock puppet has been president for another nearly 3 years. Later this month, it will be 3 years that the sock puppet's been president. Now, that is about the total destruction of free market capitalism. That's what she's talking about. It's not even a code. She's forced. She uses these words, forced trickling. That means you steal from the rich. You give to the people that vote for you. That's what that means. All right? Michelle Obama. Just amazing.
If we're not trickling voluntarily, then we need to be forced to trickle.
Forced to trickle. Gun to the head. That's as one of the Obama administration officials said. They agree with Chairman Mao that all power comes from the barrel of a gun. So forced trickling means the state comes in and steals the money of the rich, which wouldn't fuel the government for a weekend. But never mind that. They could take every billionaire's every dollar, and it wouldn't last a week. Michelle Obama with her friend Shetty.
I'm so proud of my husband and the way he led, the way his administration worked, the team that we built. So proud of everyone. I think that's because of who we are.
Yeah. There are suggestions that she's being coy with a turned heel in a demure fashion, that she's positioning herself to become the Democrat nominee when Joe Biden is forced to drop out of the race because of health concerns, because the polls show that every Democrat would kill their mothers and climb over their dead bodies to get out and vote for Michelle Obama, because to them it's all a terrible cable television show. It's like a high school prom where you choose. Of course, they don't have prom king and prom queen anymore. Now they have the non-binary something or other. The lavender queen and you can't say queen. Well, you can in a certain context now, but this is your Democrat Party. They're coming for the children, and they might carjack you on the way home today, too. Democrats love carjacking and looting. They hate the police and capitalism. Forced trickle down. Michelle Obama's latest threat.
We kind of agree with Mao that political power comes largely from the barrel of a gun.
If we're not trickling voluntarily, then we need to be forced to trickle. Mandatory trickling down.
Yeah.
Fascism with a smiley face, gun to the head governance. From the real left, Princeton, Harvard Law, Barack Obama, Frank Marshall Davis, Van Jones, John Brennan. Commies everywhere. Amazing. And it's a forced trickle-down. All right, we're going to start by taking away your oceanfront estates in Hawaii and Martha's Vineyard. Are you fearful in Martha's Vineyard? Or are you, what is that, a $14 million estate? Are you fearful? How's that chef? They ever straighten out that chef drowning thing? What's he paddleboarding for? He really didn't swim. That's kind of crazy. What was he, naked? He was naked. That was a weird development, wasn't it? Getting weirder all the time. Maybe they bought the Magnum PI mansion in Hawaii and tore it down. These lefties, they go around tearing everything down. Oh, speaking of which, they've hit pause on tearing down the statue of William Penn in Pennsylvania because everybody realized that they're fascists and that they're the Taliban. And they said, well, the Park Service under Joe Biden, well, maybe we won't tear it down after all. Maybe we'll allow William Penn, for whom the state of Pennsylvania is named, maybe we'll allow the statue of William Penn to not be torn down by you gang of violent, mentally ill lunatics. And still they have like a 9-foot high, the Democrats do in Seattle, Washington, bronze statue of Lenin, of Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, a.k.a. Lenin. Let's get to Joan Rivers, because Joan Rivers was always hilarious. And in July of 2014, someone doorstepped her and asked her a question about Barack Obama, who she says is gay. And then she says he's our first gay president, and Michelle Obama is tranny.
Do you think that the country will see the United States will see the first gay president or the first woman president?
We already have it with Obama, so let's just calm down.
Got it.
You know Michelle is a trans.
I'm sorry, she's a what?
A transgender. We all know.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my gosh. No, that was just hilarious. I always thought she was hilarious, and that's because she was. That was July of 2014. Joan Rivers then in September, right, 2 months later, went in for a minor elective procedure. September 2014, and she died at an extremely high-end clinic in Manhattan, having a minor elective procedure done, like our Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, who went in for an elective procedure and then was rushed to the hospital by ambulance, put in the intensive care unit, sedated, didn't tell anybody. Not a problem because Democrats